What's up? I'm AJ and welcome back to Gen Z Garage. Welcome back. Today is the day that you've all been waiting for, the reinstallation of the engine. I'm super excited about this because, I've been working on this for a while. We have a few little things that we need to finish first, and then we'll be installing the engine, but that will all be done in this video.
Before we get started on all the little things we need to finish, let's first recap some of the work and upgrades that we've done to this engine to get it to this point. This is the original 2.5 Iron Duke that came with this 1985 Fiero 2M4, and the goal from the very beginning was to restore it to as much the original condition as possible. Additionally, while incorporating as many OEM upgrades and improvements as we could, so long as it improved efficiency and reliability. The first change we made was to the color of the engine. We picked Ford Engine Gray, which still looks fairly original, but will make it obvious if there's an oil leak anywhere. The next change we made was incidental, but in having the transmission rebuilt using parts from a J-body transmission, we ended up with a higher final drive gear ratio, which changed from the stock Fiero's 3.35 to a slightly more aggressive 3.58 to 1 ratio. We still kept the Fiero's better matched second to third gear ratios, and at no additional weight, this makes the car a bit more quick in the gears. Next, we replaced the old and rotting pellet-style factory catalytic converter with a much more modern honeycomb-style catalytic converter. This catalytic converter came as a single replacement for the V6 Fiero and comes in 2-inch piping, which allows it to fit perfectly over the stock 1 to 7/8-inch factory piping. The old catalytic converter weighs in at a whopping 10.5 pounds compared to the 4 pounds of the newer style converter. We lose 6 pounds of weight and increase engine efficiency and fuel economy. Next, we've replaced the factory exhaust manifold with one that's at least as good as stock, but implements the newer style of Thermac heat shielding, which we've used with the Thermac valve, which has also been replaced with a new one. I've also wrapped the exhaust manifold with a header wrap, which along with the newer Thermac helps the engine warm up more quickly and reduces underhood temperatures, generally improving engine efficiency and reliability of the components in the engine compartment. We move on to the exhaust downpipe. I've reused the factory header pipe, which is mandrel bent, and wrapped it with header wrap the entire way down just before the catalytic converter. Not only does this improve engine efficiency and the reliability of engine compartment components, but it also allows the catalytic converter to operate more efficiently. Next, we've replaced the starter with a high torque gear reduction mini starter from a 1998 Pontiac Grand Am GTP. The original weighed in at a whopping 13.5 pounds compared to the 6.5 pounds with the new starter. That's a drop of an additional 7 pounds. Next, we move on to the AC compressor. By upgrading to the V5 compressor, it allows us to convert to a serpentine belt system. What's more, the newer compressor is a variable system, which can more correctly moderate load on the compressor, resulting in less engine load, less resistance, and more available horsepower. Additionally, the newer compressor weighs in at 8 pounds when compared to the nearly 14 pounds of the original compressor. That's 6 pounds in weight savings. Furthermore, using a single belt allows the compressor to use fewer non-adjustable brackets. The newer brackets weigh in at only 2.5 pounds compared to 5 pounds from the original brackets. In total, that's weight saving of an additional 8.5. Next, we move around to the front of the engine. We've installed a rare GM original Iron Duke harmonic balancer, which was found on some late model Grand Ams. This adds about 1.2 pounds over the weight of the original factory hub and pulley, but it greatly reduces engine harmonics and vibration throughout the RPM range. Next, we move over to the alternator. We upgraded the original SI model of alternator with the newer CS style of alternator. The newer alternator provides a minimum of 105 amps compared to the 72 or 94 amps of charge from the old one. Additionally, the older SI alternator weighs in at 12.5 pounds compared to the newer CS alternator, which weighs only 10.5 pounds. Before we move off the alternator, I've also upgraded the alternator pulley with a modern decoupler pulley from a newer 3800 Series 2 equipped vehicle. The decoupler pulley weighs a full pound more than the stock alternator pulley, but it significantly reduces vibration and fluctuation from the engine accessories. Next, I decided to not upgrade the exhaust system. The pipe size is the same as it is for the V6, which is 1 7/8. This is more than adequate for a stock Fiero. I have, however, sanded down all the oxidization from the entire exhaust system to the factory aluminized stainless steel and coated the entire exhaust and muffler with high heat ceramic paint. This will overall help reduce underhood temperatures and maintain a decent exhaust note when combined with the upgraded catalytic converter. Finally, the engine itself is slightly improved. I went with factory specification aluminum pistons, though due to the number of miles on the engine, went with a 40 overbore, which provides slightly more displacement. I also replaced every component in the engine that had any wear, including a factory stock specification roller camshaft from Sealed Power. This 1985 model engine also has roller lifters, which reduces resistance when compared to flat tappet lifters. Altogether, I've managed to drop 21.75 pounds just from the engine itself, which helps shift more weight from the rear of the Fiero to the front. And with that, let's get the engine back in the car! Okay, I promise you this thing is going into the car this video. But as I've said in the last two videos, getting as much on the engine and the cradle now as I possibly can will save me a ton of pain and effort once it's already in. I start by finishing up the exhaust system. I weld the header and catalytic converter pipe to the rest of the exhaust system. Everything was reinstalled using the factory springs, clamps, and hangers, so there's no exhaust rubbing or banging into the frame. We've also sprayed some dry moly lubricant on all the spring pivot points to prevent any squeaking at all, just like from the factory. With the exhaust finished, I move on to installing the axles. It's easier to do this with the engine out of the car and on the cradle, because I can be sure that they're going in properly and that I don't have any issues with the seals. I start with the driver's side axle. I first use high temperature gear grease on the splines and then a bit about the shaft for lubrication and sealing. The new axle already comes with the new C-clip, so I don't need to do anything except push it into the transmission. It goes in without too much effort, and with the click, it's properly seated. And yes, I completely forgot to remove the ABS trim ring, which needs to be removed before you do the suspension, as I will find out later. Next, I move to the passenger side and install the axle in the same way, with grease on the splines, and I force it into the transmission. It goes in with a click and without a lot of effort. Next, I fill the transmission through the dipstick with the Royal Purple SynchroMax High Performance Manual Transmission Fluid. This fluid is Royal Purple's all-purpose replacement for GM's SynchroMesh fluid, which is fully synthetic fluid, which also has additives for limited slip differential. With the engine ready, I begin lifting the Fiero off the two jack stands and up into the air to get ready for the engine cradle. I wheel the engine dolly over to the car and begin to work it into place. You'll want to make sure that the engine can fit easily under the car. The cradle is designed to have the entire motor in place and still pivot out of the engine bay for things like clutch and transmission work. In this case, I still need to raise the car a little higher. With the motor under the car, I begin to lower it slowly as my dad looks on. It helps to have two people, but it's not necessary. You'll want to lower the car a little bit, check, reposition the motor, and then let it down again. What you want to look for is anything that might get in the way or impact the firewall. Once the car is lowered onto the cradle far enough and the engine has mostly cleared the engine bay, you'll want to focus on proper adjustment into the engine bay, making sure that the front cross member is bolted up first. These are the two horizontal bolts that are pushed in from the outside in. The two vertical bolts at the rear can be installed later as the cradle is designed to pivot this way. I begin installing the cradle bolts, starting with the driver's side, and then I move on to the passenger side. With the front cradle bolts installed, I can lower the engine the rest of the way since it can now pivot on the cradle bolts. The rear bolts go in just as they came out, but it's important to get the bushings installed in the correct way so everything is at the correct mounting height. I went with a set of polyurethane bushings from the Fiero store. They sell them in both a cool red color as well as black, but I opted for black since they didn't stand out as much and mostly look stock. With the bolts in, I can now remove the cradle dolly. I raise the car up one more time from the bumper, remove the straps, slide the dolly out from under the cradle, and lower the car back onto the jack stands. And with that, the engine and cradle are officially installed.
Thank you so much for watching. I am really proud of this. I've been working for a very long time to get the engine in a state that is almost good as new. People have seen it, they're like, oh, is that a brand new engine? No, this is the same engine we started with, just completely fixed up, and I am so proud of this. I'm excited that I'm going to be able to drive it like sooner. I'm just really excited in general. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, because I mean, why would you not? You just watched me put an engine in a car. That's pretty impressive. Subscribe, it's cool. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Before you go, don't forget to sign up for the SEMA Action Network at www.semasand.com so you can receive updates on policy affecting the classic car industry. Remember, only you can make a difference in protecting the classic car hobby.
No, we can't do that. The risk of a flameout's too great. Keep them at 24,000. No, feet. One of the passengers is going to land that plane.
Is that possible?
Possible. It's 100 to 1 shot. 1,000 to 1. I know this guy.
You do? Who is it?
Name's Ted Stryker. I flew with him during the war. Won't make my job any easier tonight. Ted Stryker was a tried flight leader up to Point. One of those men who, let's just say, felt too much inside. Maybe you know the kind. And all the pieces on a particular mission. Just hope that doesn't happen tonight.